Okay. Welcome, everybody, to our final, as it turns out, Knicks Film School postgame show of the 2023-24 basketball season. I have DJ Zulo here with me. I just did a watch along with him. I also we got Andrew Claudio on the ones and twos. I'm sure he'll be up on the stage at some point before too long. DJ, if it's all right with you, I'm going to say a quick piece and then I'm going to throw it your way.
Please.
So I've said several times throughout this season, or really it's gotten to a level the last few weeks, especially, where I've run out of words for this team. And that is because they have accomplished more under greater duress and through just some of the unlikely circumstances than I think many of us who have watched sports for a very long time have ever seen before. And as I'm sitting here today, as the season ends in a fashion that I don't think any of us really anticipated was in the cards, but in retrospect, perhaps shouldn't have been too surprising. I am at a similar loss for words. And it is because there is, frankly, an emptiness inside me at the unsettling realization that this season is over. And, I'm fond of comparing sports to relationships because there are only two things I love in life. I love my wife and my kids, of course, but in a certain way, I love my wife and I love my Knicks, and I'm sure she'd actually be flattered to hear that if I don't know if she's watching upstairs. But I think the comp is appropriate sometimes, and today is one of those days because just like when you're falling in love and you're meeting someone for the first time and it's just in that special stage, you feel like, well, this is never going to end and this is always going to be there, and it's just it could never, like, how could the world ever be not perfect as it is right now in this moment? And this team over the course of this season has made us feel like, oh my god, this can't be real. This is the most amazing feeling I've ever had. And then, most pointedly, this is never going to end. And it is to their credit that injury after injury after injury, at no point in time, even if we could intellectually tell ourselves that this team was not going to win an NBA championship this year, because you need a certain modicum of healthy bodies to be able to do that. I don't think anybody who lived and died with this team this year ever got to a point where they really truly internalized the notion that this team could lose enough to the point that their season would be over, and it would be in a way that was not ultimately successful. And that is the ultimate testament to who they are and what they have accomplished. And the fact that I'm sitting here today trying to put into words as best as I can what the season, I think, meant to me personally and to all of us. And if I was smart, I would have spent some time before this moment right now thinking about what I would say in the event of a loss. And my God, why wouldn't I have taken that step to think about what I would say in the event of a loss? Because, again, logic, reason, common sense, history in the league tells us, well, you lose one key member of your team at this stage of the playoffs, you're probably done. You lose two key members of your team, you're probably done. You lose three key members of your team, you're probably done. You lose four key members of your team, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And yet again, none of us, I don't think, ever reached the point where in the pit of our souls, we thought that this team would actually lose today, even though, again, logically, it makes all the sense in the world. So that's the other reason I'm kind of struggling for the words right now. And then, the last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to turn it over to DJ, because I know we are among the old heads. So we have been through ups and we've been through downs. And we have a certain perspective on this team for that reason, and certainly on this series for that reason. And we will talk about the game. I promise you, we will talk about the game. But the reason I think all of us felt that way ultimately, that they were just somehow, some way, going to find it within themselves to come up with a victory this afternoon, is because the season has taken on a storybook quality. And fairy tales are fairy tales because they have happy endings. They don't have sad endings. And they certainly don't have endings that end with a dud like this. And if you think that I'm gearing up to be critical of this team or critical of their effort, I'm not. It's actually quite the contrary. Today, what happened to them in the Garden, and I have not said one word about the Indiana Pacers yet because this Knicks team deserve to have the final post-game live stream be about them first, and then we will praise the Pacers. And boy, oh boy, are they deserving of all the praise in the world. We're going to get there. I promise. I don't want to seem like I'm salty because what that team went in there and did today was unbelievable. And they deserve credit for it. And their best players deserve credit for it. And their coach deserves credit for it. Everything. But because of what they were able to do, it was a reminder that all of those wins and all of those victories and all of those come from behind somehow, some way. How in the good Lord did you find it within yourself, both individually and as a team, to come up with some of the victories that they came up with through the course of these playoffs and over the course of really the last 3 months of the season, ever since January 27th? The fact that it fell flat on its face today was a reminder that all of those wins and efforts, it wasn't magic. It wasn't something that was destined. It was a basketball team full of guys that found something within themselves that they had no right to find, and that they still managed to find and put it out there on the court. And it was as Benji said on a earlier post-game live stream, it became a religious experience. Because how else could you explain what they were finding within themselves to put forth on the court other than something that is supernatural? And the fact that that ran out today should not be looked at as a failure, for as much as it will be seen in some circles. And I get it, that it is a failure that they couldn't win this game or they couldn't win this series. And we will always go back to look at game 3 for that. But I can't in good conscience look at it that way. I have to look at this as a sign of just how special it is that they were able to summon it all the other times that they did. They weren't able to summon it today. It is the most understandable situation that you could ever imagine. The Pacers shooting 67% from the field, less understandable, but shit happens. And I'm really thankful that we got a chance to watch the team. I'm thankful and feel very fortunate that they were part of our lives, not only since the end of January, but the whole year. And that's what I have to say about them. So on that note, DJ, I'm gonna kick it over to you.
Yeah, you there's been teams that we've been watching this team for about the same amount of time since those 90s runs, and there have been teams where you forget games, you forget how it happened, the ebbs and flows, but you don't forget how they made you feel. And I don't have any doubt that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I'm going to remember back randomly or because of, telling stories about the team, but I'm going to remember and recall like how this team made me feel. And I know you did it. And, I tried my best to reiterate and just talk about how what we were seeing at multiple points during this year was not normal, was special. There will be better iterations of this team, this Jalen Brunson led team, that will do bigger and greater things. But I don't know if I'll ever feel quite the same about them.
Sports, man.
I knew this. Can I get through? I said to myself, will the Italian blood come out and just, but listen, I've thought about this game and this team and this series multiple times today, and I've had a similar reaction. I should have predicted this, but they've grabbed my heart in a way that is pretty intense, and I thank them for it. I thank everyone for just being on the ride with us and the community that you've talked about and all that. This was storybook in so many ways. And I thought you took the words right out of my mouth when you said, fairy tales don't have bad endings. Many movies do. Many great stories have bad endings.
Yeah.
But those stories and those movies and those, dramas, they tend to stick with you for the rest of your days. It's because of the ride. It's because of the ebbs and the flows and like the love that you gave this team. And we gave it because they deserved it. And despite the fact that it ended today, and to be completely honest, it probably ended early in that second quarter, some in certain parts, even though they made runs. But the fact that it ended the way it did does not take anything away from what they did this year, which is one of the gutsiest, most courageous seasons in the history of the sport. I will say that, and you can bring up examples that will rival it, but this was a season for the ages in terms of what this team had to continually go through. The obstacles just kept coming, and we haven't even mentioned the fact that their best player ends the game in the locker room with a broken hand. Which, the poetic nature of it all it's a knife in the heart. But it's also, it doesn't take away from how proud I am of them, and that's the main emotion. It's a 10 out of 10 in the pride scale, and I'll love them. They'll love this team forever.
I mean, you talk about movies, greatest romance of all time, Casablanca. Here's looking at you, kid. They do not end up together at the end.
They do not.
So maybe in that sense, this team was destined to end with something like this. It happens. I do feel an obligation to talk about the game today that we just witnessed. And again, I'll just say it. I kind of said it before. I will say it again. What the Pacers did today in a Game 7 on Madison Square Garden floor. Like, do I think that all of a sudden the Garden mystique vanished after decades and decades? No, I don't think so. I think that Pacer team is really deserving of a lot of credit. And there is not a player in professional sports that I have disliked more than Tyrese Halliburton since Reggie Miller. I think arguably, maybe there's been one or two. The hate scale for Halliburton, it is it's the Lindsay Lohan meme. The there is no limit. It's infinity. Whatever, I forget how exactly it goes. That was superstar stuff today because a team follows its best player's lead. The limit does not exist. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew reminded me. A team follows its superstar's lead, and I understand Pascal Siakam is the guy that came out and really put the Pacers on his back early, and I don't want to diminish his accomplishment because that, in a practical sense, was more important. But what Halliburton came and did on the Garden and Siakam, I mean the two of them just together, that is, I think there's a reason why you saw their role players not miss shots. I don't even want to go and do the math on let's add up Neesmith and Nembhard and McConnell and Shepard and maybe throw Obi and Turner. Add all those guys up. Is that I know they shot 67% for the game. Did the role players shoot 80%? Because it that's what it felt like. And I guess to turn it to a little bit of not X's and O's, but the shots from the opening tip-off, and I'm going to throw it to you very quickly on this one because you're better to talk about this than me. Almost from the opening tip until really, frankly, nearly. I mean, the last few minutes they let go of the rope, but it was understandable. But for more than 40 minutes of this game, the shots that the Pacers were hitting, the backbreaker shots, they were the shots that if you're an NBA defensive coordinator, you game plan to allow those shots. Now, obviously, would you like a contest? Of course, you'd like a contest. Would you like to generate turnovers? Would you like to do all the things like during the stretches of that the Knicks have shown us at times where it's just like you're not getting anything, but within reason, if you are going to give up shots, you're going to want to give up shots. And I'm not saying that Pacers didn't get their fair share of looks from three. I'm not saying the Pacers didn't get their fair share of looks at the rim. They did. Again, incredible offensive performance. But how many freaking times were there in this game where you saw often a Pacer role player, step into a long two and just get nothing but the bottom of the net? And at some point, you just have to tip your cap.
Yeah, when we were watching the game, we just kept saying, well, that'll stop. Maybe Halliburton will keep it going and have one of those games where he's making the majority of his threes. But you just thought, like, all right, the Aaron Nesmith, catch, run him off the line, step into a pull-up jumper. Like those won't go in with the same amount of frequency, and they somehow did. And listen, it'll require like a rewatch to really diagnose what the issues were. To me, there was, I talk about this with my kids all the time, where you have a bucket, you start the day with a full bucket, and then if shit goes wrong in the morning, you take a little bit of the stuff, the bucket empties a little bit, and then it just keeps emptying, and then sometimes by the end of the day, you have nothing left. And I felt like for this team, despite it being a game 7, and it almost doesn't compute, where how can this team not have their peak energy, their peak verve? Well, because as we've talked about in this post-game show, what they had to do to get to this point. And you mentioned it, those games in February, grinding out wins. DiVincenzo playing 38 minutes, Precious Achiuwa averaging 40 minutes for a stretch of games. There was a cost to that. It wasn't magic, like you said, right? There was a cost.
Nope.
And maybe that cost, that bill came due in these last couple of games, because there was something missing tonight. And the whole Anunoby piece of it. Fred Katz tweeted that it was Tom Thibodeau said after the game that it was his decision to pull Anunoby and not put him back in the game based on how he was looking on the floor. And there were indications prior to the tip off that he was not moving well during pregame shoot around and pregame warmups. So that shouldn't come as a major surprise, but he was, and this is not something that no one has mentioned. This is very, we know this. He's the linchpin to how they defend, and they just don't have enough to keep a dynamic offense from putting up great numbers without him. The Pacers they were in rotations. The Knicks, as Benji puts it, they were in the blender almost the entire game from the start. And if you watch the Knicks, despite scoring a little a reasonable level to start the game, these weren't shots that gave me much optimism that they could hold that for an entire 40-minute performance. I think there's Jalen, despite I know he broke his hand late, but I don't know what that foot injury has to be a concern, because he did not look like himself, and he was not drawing any sort of help. He was not. Rarely did the Pacers have 2 to the ball. Rarely did the Knicks play with an advantage. And when you're playing against a team that is consistently playing with advantages, it's just a hard juxtaposition, and it's just hard to keep up with them.
By the way, I just did the math on Nembhard, Nesmith, Turner, McConnell, Shepard, and Jackson, 79% between those guys. That's freaking wild. So just Obi struggled. He was 1 of 4. Unreal. Okay, Brunson. You brought up Brunson. You also talked about, you'll remember feelings about this season when you go back and you think about it years from now. Mm-hmm. Even though this game ended like it did today, this is still going to be the season of Jalen Brunson. And today should not diminish that. Look, whether it was his foot bothering him, whether it was because he ran out of gas, or whether Jalen Brunson just had a bad game. It cannot, it cannot diminish what he was able to accomplish this season. Not 1%. Not 1% of 1%. Um, you know, I it's a it's a shame he didn't get one final chance in the end of the third quarter, fourth quarter to redeem himself. I will go to my grave believing that he would have somehow, some way found it within himself to at least bet a part of a push. It didn't happen. And to your point about the defense, the thing I guess I will think about a lot is how this series was. I mean, it felt like it was relentless. It was like I was exhausted by game 3, doing these freaking things, and I didn't have to play the games. And there was one stretch where it was 2 days off. Otherwise, it was every other game. And the fact that today came so soon after game 6, I wonder how much that matters. And then the other part of it is like, look at the teams in basketball that succeed in the playoffs, and the Knicks were out there running out 2 6-foot point guards. And I know Deuce tries to give him hell, but he's a 6-foot point guard. And DiVincenzo, who's 6'3", Josh Hart, who's 6'4", and a center. And when they didn't have one of those guys in, they replaced one of them with Precious Achiuwa, who I thought, I don't want to bash anybody today. Let's just say Precious Achiuwa did not have his best game. There's a reason why he is, as we've politely come to refer to him as, a wonderful depth piece. But like, if you are relying on Precious Achiuwa to be your defensive stopper and to be the guy that turns the tide defensively, you are probably not in a great place as a basketball team, to say nothing of the negative impact he has on the other end of the floor. So again, when you look at just brass tacks of, well, what are they without OG Anunoby? I don't have it handy. Maybe I'll probably do it at some point before tomorrow or the next day or whatever. But if you look at all the games that they played without Anunoby from the end of January, from January 29th, starting then up until today, my guess is you're going to find that they're about a 500 team. And, and they obviously during the regular season, they played a lot of bad games, bad teams in that stretch. Like, you put this team out there for a full season without OG Anunoby, more or less, that's probably what they are, and that's even with Bojan Bogdanovic, who, again, that's a name we haven't said thus far on the post game, or Mitchell Robinson. It's like, and again, that's not that's not an excuse, but it is necessary context to anybody who's like, they should be, I hope we don't get any of this tonight. But if anybody's thinking of being like, that wasn't a requisite effort in a game 7, I'm sorry, I can't hear it. I can't hear it, given who the personnel that they had and how much they have put forth and how much they probably had left, or more accurately, did not have left.
No, I mean, look, I think there was, I think the Knicks obviously win the series. I think the Knicks win the series, obviously, if Anunoby's healthy. But this, and you talked about it, the Pacers, they've had a great game tonight or today. They are a really good team that from the start of the season performed in a way that gave the Knicks trouble. And they were going, even with the healthy Anunoby, that they were going to stretch the Knicks in a way that was going to provide problems for this Knicks team. And even if the Knicks would have won this series with a healthy Anunoby, I don't think they would have just bludgeoned them, because this is a really good Pacer team that made every shot today. And I don't think the Knicks came out with, efforts like one of those things where you can decide, all right, consciously, I just don't really feel like it today, or it's a January game against the Pistons, and I just don't, we're gonna give it 75%. This, if they didn't have 100% effort today, it was not because they consciously decided to do that. They just didn't have it to give, and that is the reality of. There's a huge difference, and that's I think the reality of where this season has gone. And why we shouldn't be completely shocked about how it ended, because sometimes, again, we're talking endings again, but sometimes endings end really bad because
Eh,
all the things that led to the end mattered. And it wasn't like
yeah.
they were pulling from this area that wasn't going to have a cost at some point. And
And
that's,
Deej,
yeah.
just to be like abundantly clear, I know we said it already, but it deserves repeating. Like that, was it the level of defense that we saw at times in game 5? Was it the level of defense that we saw for that 10-minute stretch I keep referencing from game 3 where they took that 9-point lead? Was it the level of defense that they found a way within themselves to play at the end of game 2? Was it the level of defense that we saw repeatedly throughout the Philly series? No, it wasn't at that level, but like the notion that they were going out there and dogging it today, or the notion that they were just like again, credit to Indiana. You have to give credit to Indiana for taking advantage of every bit of anything that the Knicks gave them,
Well,
and for
speaking, I
not
mean,
folding at any point in time.
77-70, Knicks were cutting into the lead. Deuce had for a split second, I don't know how open he was, but he had a look from the right corner,
Yep.
passes it up, cross-court pass, turnover, score. Knicks come down again, Brunson turnover, and I'm pretty sure that was the
That's where he broke.
Halliburton where he broke his hand.
Yep.
And that was the last, for all intents and purposes, that was the last run. And it was DiVincenzo came out in that third quarter. He was given the Halliburton assignment. He was making threes. The crowd was back into it. And it goes to show you about the margins this team has been playing with since Julius went down has been paper thin. And it just takes one mistake, one error in judgment. And I forget who tweeted it. It might have been Mike Prada. These mistakes, these bad errors, they tend to come up when you're just fatigued and you're exhausted.
The Knicks needed to play a perfect game today to win this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
Not 97th percentile game, not 98th percentile game, not 99. Like the way the Pacers were making shots, the Knicks needed to play a perfect game. They didn't play a perfect game. Certainly not going to kill them for it. DJ, I'm going to move on to the segments. Do you want to hang around for any of this, or you're going to get out of here?
I can hang for a few. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do the segments.
Why don't we do the segments? And that'll give us a chance to compliment some guys. So we start with our Autograph Player of the Game, again, presented by our good friends at Autograph, who've been a wonderful partner throughout this playoff run. Sad that it has to end. Download the Autograph app, use code KFS, get rewarded for your Knicks fandom. There will still be content produced about this team in the coming days and weeks, so keep going, Autograph. They may not have any Knicks tickets to give away for a great price, but you'll definitely be able to still get your content through Autograph and earn points and rewards for your fandom. So I think it would be appropriate if we each picked a different player. And then I actually think it would be appropriate if Andrew came out from behind the scenes and maybe picked the third guy, because I think there are 3 guys that deserves to have their names mentioned. DJ, I'm going to let you go first. Who do you want to talk about?
Well, thank you. During the watch playback, I don't know how many threes DiVincenzo ended up making, 9 of them. And I said, if there's always going to be, you take solace in a season, you sort of project forward. What DiVincenzo has been able to do at times in these games when Brunson's either been out or Randall's been out, and he's been required to elevate his performance. He's done it more times than he hasn't. So to make 9 threes in a game 7 and do everything in his power to keep the Knicks, breathing in this game, it was another phenomenal performance. He is as gutsy as they come. He is an absolute winner, and I don't care about whether or not he's won a championship. Or has he had one?
He has a college championship and an NBA championship
and
with
he's
the Bucks.
With the Bucks, right? So he is a winner, and it is. I can't wait for what he can bring next year, because he is just a phenomenal player who had another phenomenal game. Listen, not every one of those buckets were in a meaningful game, but a lot of them were. And I think he deserves my pick for player of the game, and just an incredible season for him. And I like I said, I can't wait for because I feel like he has tapped into something in his own game that he's removed the ceiling. And I don't know how big the ceiling is, but there's a lot more juice in that orange than maybe we thought coming in. Well, definitely what we thought coming in, and even what we thought 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Yeah, I am pretty comfortable putting, not even in pencil, I'm happy to put in pen Dante DiVincenzo, your starting shooting guard for the Knicks. And that may seem obvious. But to be very clear, I'm talking about, we know some of the names that may be available on the trade market. I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? I'd rather keep the guy we have. We don't have to give up anything to get, and more, the contract that he's on, obviously, with how he came through repeatedly this season. That's someone you ride with. Andrew, why don't you go?
Am I leaving one for you? Is that how this is going? So I'll let you say the.
I wonder if you know who I want.
I guess I'm going Alec Burks here.
Yeah,
because I'm pretty sure you want to. I know exactly who you want to say. Alec Burks finished with 26 points on 13 shot attempts in this game in the first quarter, when it looked like this team didn't have a pulse and we were headed for a repeat of last Sunday. Alec Burks gave him a spark off the bench. And if you told me 5 games ago that OG Anunoby going down and being forced to play Alec Burks minutes, especially after the 1 minute he played in game 2, I would have thought you were crazy if you would told me that was going to be a positive impact. But they had a chance in this series when he went down. It even got us optimistic with the potential of OG coming back. At 5 threes, which led the game in game 5. And then today just continued to fight. Amazing how 5 games can change the outlook of a season. And I still think he largely underperformed what he was brought here to do in the last 2 months after the trade, but showed up in the playoffs and will be able to use that as a negotiating tactic this offseason. But credit to Alec Burks, my player of the game.
Listen, man, Alec Burks is a gamer. He is your favorite hooper's favorite hooper. And at the very least, I don't think anybody would go down this road, but like, in retrospect, what they got out of Bogey during the playoffs before he got hurt and what they got out of Burks, like, it's not like there were any reinforcements that they could have gotten at the deadline that they didn't get. Like, this team did what they had to do. They did what they could do to fortify what was ultimately something that could not be fortified. So credit to Alec Burks. Thank you for leaving Josh Hart for me. Look, Josh Hart's stat line in this game, I mean, he didn't make a 3, took 4, missed all of them, ended up shooting 3 of 9 overall, 10 points, 5 assists, 8 rebounds, obviously fouled out and got the standing O. Yes, this was the Jalen Brunson season. It'll always be remembered as the Jalen Brunson season. Yes, Dante DiVincenzo emerged as a kind of like right below the level of an all-star kind of caliber player when he's really going and makes you, question his ceiling moving forward. Isaiah Hartenstein became a guy, went from a backup to now a guy that the Knicks are going to feel like, oh my God, we have to re-sign him. Deuce showed you that he is way more than just a depth piece. I know we didn't have a great game today. The things that made us fall in love with this basketball team were embodied by Josh Hart more than anyone. And again, we've made so many of the comps and so many of the analogies between this, not analogies, but like why this team is so appropriate as New York's team and how they go about their business. And it is so New York. Like, New Yorkers do not call in sick. New Yorkers do not take the easy road. They will, because we are all stubborn in a way that I don't know if a non-New Yorker could ever fully understand. Like, we will try to do the thing just to show you that we could do the thing. And for Josh Hart to go out there and play 37 minutes of, I got to say, I thought he played pretty well. I know he didn't make any threes, but other than that, like, and a couple of defensive possessions where he just didn't have it, like, you could not there's no universe where you should have been able to get that 2 days after, not even a full 48 hours after an ab strain for an injury that, like I said it, when did I say it on the last post game, right? Like, or at some point, this injury kept LeBron James out for 2.5 weeks 3 years ago. You know, this is absurd that he was able to come and play today. And that is the one thing that I will smile about from this game, is that Josh Hart showed you that he is just a different breed. And so credit to him. He is my autograph player of the game. Hold on. You're muted, Andrew.
So this next segment should be interesting. The Unified Healing Road to Recovery, presented by Unified Healing. Go to unifiedhealing.com to learn more and find a center near you. So who was healthy at the end of the series?
So by the end of the series, well, if you run a
Deuce,
so
Precious, and
hold on, the full version of this team, the full healthy rotation of this team after the OG Anunoby trade. Okay. And after the Quentin Grimes trade, you want to go there too. I know the Grimes trade came after Julius went down, but let's kind of combine those for two. Your starting lineup would be Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, OG, Julius, and Isaiah Hartenstein, with off the bench Mitch, Bogey,
Hart,
Josh Hart,
Burks, Hart, and Deuce. So that's actually, obviously it never got to 10 men because of Julius went down, but so there's 10 rotation players post OG trade. By the end of this game, we were left with healthy Dante DiVincenzo, Deuce McBride, Alec Burks, and Isaiah Hartenstein, who I'm not convinced was Hartenstein and DiVincenzo, the two of them, you want to talk about that at gas. So really, it's you were left with your 10th man, your probably 9th man in Deuce, your 5th guy in Hartenstein, 5th, 6th, and then your 4th, 5th guy in DiVincenzo. That's what you had left.
Then you got the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semis.
Should not be
back,
possible.
When the sting subsides, we will look back and we will, and it's happening now a little bit. I'm sure we all feel that same pride in everything. But that when the sting goes away, that's all we're gonna feel, and it's going to be an incredible season to relive, because so many great moments. So many.
Yep.
I don't think I have a single bad thing to say about this team. I got to be honest. What they fought for, the way they fought, the effort they put in. I mean, John, you just said it about Josh Hart, an ab strain, and you gave us that effort today. I got nothing. I got nothing critical.
Andrew, when he was putting on, you said it in the chat, when he was putting a sock on during one of the pregame interviews, grimacing.
Yep.
Just putting a sock on before the game.
Just trying to pull up his sock. That was tough. And he played in a Game 7 with a strained abs, 37 minutes, and gave us 10, 8, 5, and 2. And a hard-fought 6 fouls. I got nothing. Before we let you go, DJ, I actually want to do something, because I'm gonna get emotional on this chat on this post game today. I know I am. I'm gonna do my best to be there for you, John, if you also get emotional, because I'm seeing ahead of time the outpouring of gratitude from the KFS faithful. There's 4 chats that are actually about the game, so if you don't mind just answering them with us, DJ, so we can get them.
Sure, absolutely.
Get them
Can I ask a favor?
What?
Can I take one quick pee break?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let DJ start.
We'll get the anti-Tibbs one out the way. How's that?
Is there an anti-Tibbs one?
There's one that I you know what? If you want to be here for it, you can. We could just.
I don't.
Okay, there we go. John, good. Empty the bladder. You're good. So we'll do that one first. And
sure.
Thank you to everybody that sends in a contribution, regardless of how asinine your take is. We'll start here. David Gretter. Drop coverage. Let them get what they wanted. Get where they wanted. Tibbs needed to adjust, forcing Hallie to pick it up and go wherever. Did what I'm reading it wrong, probably because it's the wrong take. Forcing Hallie to pick it up or go wherever he didn't want was the best defense we played, but Tibbs didn't switch it to full time. Your thoughts, DJ?
Yeah, there was more drop than any other coverage. Like you can hedge, you can blitz, but I think, listen, we've spent most of this post game talking about what this team had left or what little they had left more appropriately. So when you play a drop coverage, that by definition is you're the more conservative approach that requires the least amount of backline rotation. The Pacers, by the nature of how they play, the speed, the transition, all those things, they're going to put you in a state of constant rotation. And one of the unfortunate aspects of how the series sort of manifested is that the Knicks really struggled when they were in rotation, when they had to close out to their shooters, whether it was giving up open looks or letting blow-bys happen without much resistance. So if you're going to play a more aggressive pick and roll coverage, you are going to invite more of those rotations. And if you don't have your best backline defender healthy, then I don't know if you can play a more aggressive style. When OG Anunoby was at his peak of his powers in the Philadelphia series, you can trust him to be that backline defender and clean up a lot of those things that when you were playing aggressive coverage on Maxey and the pass was made and there was a play at the basket, you trusted Anunoby to be there to contest and deter that shot. Without having that, I don't know if you can play a more aggressive style and get away with it because, again, you're in more rotations. You are now exhausting yourself even more. I just didn't think it was.
I was about to say,
I didn't think it was a realistic thing to do. Now, if you had a healthy team and all your healthy participants,
it's different.
I completely get the point, David.
Detail junkie, that was extremely well said, and you answered this question thoroughly. We had 6 guys that could walk today. Like,
thank you.
Come on, David. We cannot with the adjustments when we had 6 guys, and he did switch guys onto he did switch up matchups throughout the game, but the other team shot 67% and set a record for field goal percentage in a game 7.
Only so much you could do, right? That's
really. Thank you for the contribution, David. Hope you enjoyed this season. Jesse M.
That Nembhard 3 is the new gen Hibbert block. It sucks. It really does suck because, look, that 3 doesn't go down. Brunson scores on the other end. You win game 3. You figure you end the season or you end the series in 5 games, which a lot of people picked. Does OG make it back? I mean, let me say this. This is going to help me sleep at night. This is just me. Given how OG Anunoby looked in the first 5 minutes of this game, I'm not sure when he would have gotten to the level that it would have been required to stay on the floor against the Boston Celtics. And for all the flowery, wonderful things we've said about this basketball team, if you take OG Anunoby off of it, I'm just not sure they were going into Boston and beating that Celtics team. I could be wrong, but it would have been a little bit challenging.
Only thought I have there is maybe he gets back by game 3. Maybe he really was another week away. But if he was, apparently he pushed to play today. He was walking up the court.
Yeah.
It didn't seem close.
No.
But you would have still liked to win game 3. Andrew P, get JB a co-star. Shouldn't be dribbling all game. I mean, they have a co-star. He was on the bench in street clothes.
I actually just got a text, and DJ, this is actually perfect for you. I got a text is there a star the Knicks could add next season? And my only response was Julius Randle. So,
yeah, I mean, look, he's not a perfect co-star. I think you can easily come up with several names at least that would sort of be more synergistic with Jalen Brunson. But the Knicks,
good word.
We saw what this team was. Again, go back to January. We saw and Fred Katz has reported it and talked about it, how Randall was really bought in to what this team could do. And that necessitated an adjustment on his part to be more of a facilitator, to be a playmaker, more of a playmaker. If you just look at the drives per game, it was 18 and change drives per game before the All-Star. It went to 21 after the All-Star break, and it's like 24 during the playoffs. When you're driving that many times as a small guard, and again, I keep going back to this. It's like maybe a theme of the post game for me, but there's a cost to that.
Yeah.
You don't do that, and then not, and that was, and this is not me patting myself on the back thing. I hate doing it, but I will go back to those games in February where Brunson was scoring 36 and just figuring it out and how amazing that was. But there was a drastic change in approach that was necessary, but was in the worrisome part was how can you sustain that and then still have enough to have a long playoff run. And he did as much as you can possibly do with the amount of obstacles in front of him. But we saw in these last couple of games, last 3 games, and change, there was a cost to all those extra drives, extra bumps, extra running around screens. That matters. And when Julius is back next year, that will be lessened. And whether it's another co-star, that'll be lessened. And so to Andrew's point, a co-star is needed. Julius is there, and he will, I presume, likely to be on the team next year. But if it's not him, it needs to be someone else, because it can't be a Jalen Brunson and auxiliary pieces type thing.
It won't be. Not for. I mean, we could all rest assured. If it's not Julius, it's going to be someone better than Julius, and that's not. I don't mean that to diminish what Julius is and his talent.
It's a reality. It's a reality of the business.
If it's not Julius Randle in that spot next year, it's going to be someone better than Julius Randle.
Stephen Bondi on Twitter, leaving the locker room for the final time this season. Josh Hart pointed at Isaiah Hartenstein and OG Anunoby and said, those two better come back. I am very confident that they will be back. And then the last one before we let you go, DJ, from Randy Smith.
Cancun on 3, Knicks fans, LOL. I don't get it.
So I'm assuming, Randy, if you're a Pacer fan, look, I'm Mr. They not like us, and I just have to tip my hat to the Pacers. Being down 2-0, being down 3-2, especially after the way Game 5 looked, you tip your cap. They set a record for how well they shot. They did not look like a young team, not ready for the moment. They went into the world's most famous arena and beat a team with 5 healthy players. But they still won, and you can't take that away from them, and I'm rooting for Boston. So that's the biggest accomplishment of the Pacers season. They got a lifelong Knicks fan to root for Boston in the conference finals. But hat tip to you. I can't wait until your next 10-point lead so Tyrese Halliburton can gain the ability to speak again. If Randy, if you're not a Pacer fan, then you just spent $2 because your team lost, which makes you a loser in a round earlier, and now you're gonna go get
assuming it's
watch.
a Philly fan.
I'm just assuming because we've had a ton of Philly fans in the chat watching from the sidelines, which you have every year for the majority of the process, which you lost a ton of, which turned you guys into losers. I don't know why this is turning into an anti-Philly.
I don't know.
I can't make it anti-Miami. Randy, enjoy the offseason with us as well. Unless you're a Pacer fan, then congrats.
Randy, subscribe, rate, and review. All right, DJ, anything else before we get you out of
here? Words escaping me a bit here, but it's just a season that I'll never forget. And I will say part of what has made the season so special was, doing these things with you guys, being part of the KFS community has been an incredible privilege for me. And it's really enhanced what I feel about this team, and, sort of like the responsibility to sort of to provide, help provide content that is good and high quality. So I appreciate what all you guys do, and it's been amazing watching this team with you guys, and just having that community and all that has been wild and exceeded all expectations when I came on board about a year ago. So thank you guys. It's been great.
Privilege is all mine, DJ. I promise you that. Has been amplified tenfold by what you've been able to do with your analysis and the emotional part of it too, because again, we both go way back. So all right, enjoy what's left of your Sunday, my friend.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you, DJ.
Enjoy it.